What have I been reading? Definitely what is so far looking to be the most hyped book of 2017, the most hyped young adult book I should say, is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. I received a proof copy. This doesn't come out in the UK until April. It's published by Walker Books here, but it is a debut novel by an American author, and I think a lot of people are talking about it in the US as well, which is where this book is set. So if you haven't heard anything about it, it says quite clearly on the back that it's inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and this is a very modern, very realistic story. It's about a 17-year-old called Star, and she sort of has two very separate parts of her life. She lives in a black neighborhood called Garden Heights, but she goes to school on the other side of the city in a very white school where she's one of maybe only two black kids in her entire year, and they would describe where she lives as the ghetto, so she doesn't invite her friends over. And you know, she experiences racism at school in sort of little subtle ways. That alone could be a very readable, believable young adult story, I think. But instead of that, or as well as that, at the beginning of this story, Star's friend is shot by a policeman in the street for no reason. So this becomes a story about justice and a story about truth and protest. It's a story about a community, and Star has quite a dysfunctional family in terms of sort of step siblings and stuff like that, but I think one of my favourite things about this is the relationship and the strength of her family, and her relationship with her father is really sweet and really interesting, and it's so well written, and it's a first person narration. She's very aware that she's two different people when she's at home and when she's at school, and then that actually comes out in the dialogue. If you read it quite closely, you can see that it's almost like two different characters. The kind of language she chooses when she talks to her friends and when she talks to the police, and then when she's at home and she's comfortable with her brothers. So it's very sad and heavy and important. It's such an important book. I've seen nothing but good reviews for this. I think it's such an impressive debut novel to just, like I said, this could just be a young adult novel. It could be a 17-year-old called Star with a white boyfriend who, you know, her family are here and her school's here. That would be enough, and instead this author just decided to take this to a place where it might really matter to a lot of people. So please read this and please challenge your own prejudice. So this is a proof cover, and then I also have this book is the next one, and these two just go together really nicely on my bookshelf. So I picked this up months ago from Penguin, published by Ebury Press, and this is Final Girls by Riley Sager, you know me and last names. This doesn't come out until July, which I guess isn't that far away. It has these gorgeous slightly pink pages. When I was reading this in the train, people were looking at me. Final Girls, this is about a young woman called Quincy, and when Quincy was at college, she was involved in a massacre where a group of her college friends were murdered, and she was the only survivor. And she sort of at the time became connected to two other women who years earlier, when they were around the same age, had been involved in similar crimes where they were the sole survivors. So it's about the media kind of, and the internet, this kind of horrible dark side of the internet, titling them the Final Girls and getting really interested in their lives and thinking they were kind of magical or special. So Quincy is just this normal woman, and she runs a baking blog, and she has a nice boyfriend and a nice apartment in New York, and then one of the final girls dies and the other one turns up on her doorstep. This is a thriller. I could not stop reading this book. This book is, how long is this book? It's almost 400 pages long, and I just absolutely tore through it because it was so tense. It's told in first person, but then there's also these flashback kind of pages that are quite short, but they kind of describe in third person what happened when her friends were murdered. This is great. This is really great. Kind of put me in the mind of Gone Girl. I know that's probably a really easy comparison, but yeah, just really well written, interesting female characters, and massive twist that I did not see coming. So I don't have too much else to say except I just really enjoyed this. Then most recently, I just finished this the other day. Simon & Schuster sent me a book that's going to be published in May, the 4th of May. It's called The Girl in Between, and it's by an Irish writer called Sarah Carroll. So you probably can't see. You probably can't. Oh yeah, you can. It says, "No one sees me, I'm invisible." Here's a fun fact that I maybe shouldn't tell you because it shows how much I'm lacking in perception and probably sleep lately. But this was sent to me as a review copy, obviously. And I get a lot of emails, and sometimes I don't get emails. Sometimes books just turn up and I read them. But anyway, I didn't realize that this was a kid's book at all. I mean, it's quite short. The fonts are quite large, but I don't know. It didn't strike me as a children's book, and then I felt really silly when I realised, not that adults can't read children's books, but generally I notice when I'm reading one, so that was cool. Anyway, this is told from the perspective of a child. It's set in Dublin. I don't think it ever really says it's set in Dublin, but it is set in Dublin. It's very Irish, and it's about a mother and daughter. The mother has struggled with addiction, with alcohol and with drugs, and she and her daughter are living on the streets, or at least they were. But when the story begins, they're living in this old abandoned mill, and to the daughter, it's paradise. It's amazing, and there's so much to explore. It's an account of them trying to get by. It kind of explores how they got to that point, what the mother's actions were. A little bit, you get to see quite a lot of how people in this city treat them. It's just very sad, but it's very beautifully written. It's not kind of glorifying living on the streets, or it's not taking that story away from people. But the whole point of this book is that no one is allowed to see the kid. She's invisible, and that's because her mother hides her so that the police or the authorities don't take her away and put her into care. But it sort of works on so many more levels that we being people who don't live in the streets, who are lucky enough to, have homes, we do tend to overlook certain groups of people or make assumptions about them. And I think this book is very good at twisting those assumptions. This definitely made me think. It was definitely very sad and very sweet. And it also has a twist, which I will not spoil. It's very Irish writer, Irish setting, very Irish dialogue. So I would definitely encourage friends and friends with younger family members and friends to pick this up and give it a read in May when it's published by Simon & Schuster. So those are 3 books I've read very recently. I'm currently reading Homegoing, and I still haven't finished Idaho, which I mentioned in the last one of these I did. I don't know why, I just kind of got caught up in these 3 books because these were all really fast reads. I really wanted to know the conclusion in all 3 cases. So if you're kind of in a bit of a reading rut and you want something you can tear through, I definitely recommend Final Girls, just because you need to know what happens. I'd recommend The Girl in Between because it's very short, and I'd recommend The Hate You Give because it's just so important that you need to read it. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Let me know what you're reading. Links to these books will be below as usual. Cool. Keep reading. See you next time. Bye.